Hey everybody, welcome to episode 61 of the Defend Your Ground podcast. This is Ben, Executive Director of Blue Ribbon Coalition. I'm here tonight with Simone Griffin, our Policy Director, Nick Pucci, our Marketing Director, and tonight we are going to talk about the Miller Mountain Land Exchange. So Simone, why don't you give us a brief background on what is going on in Wyoming with the Miller Mountain Land Exchange?
Yeah, so this is happening in southern Wyoming. And we do see land exchange proposals often. It's not like this is out of nowhere and we never see these. I mean, these do happen, these land exchanges. They're written into resource management plans that, this is allowed and whatnot. So this is, like I said, southern Wyoming. And the BLM is proposing to trade 1,802 acres of current BLM land for 2,275 acres of non-BLM land. So they would swap those, and the BLM would also pay this corporation that owns the non-BLM currently that they would trade with 160,000 acres. So acres. Yeah, I said acres.
I'll
no
take the acres,
acreage.
please. Someone else can have the inflated dollars.
So BLM's giving up 1,800. They're getting 2,275 acres, and they're also paying this corporation $160,000. And so that's the deal of it. It's to Fort Hill LLC. We don't know anything about the LLC that we're trading with. This process started back in 2015. So under the Obama administration is when they first put out a public comment period, like scoping to see what people thought about it. So, I mean, it's been a decade that they've been looking at doing this. And
yeah, which is worth pointing out because anyone who's ever been in a real estate transaction knows that the timing sensitivity of a real estate deal is 90% of the deal. Like you've got interest rate fluctuations, you've got market pricing fluctuations, you've got a competitive marketplace. It's not quite the same when you're dealing with like a federal land management exchange. But the real estate market moves fast. It's moved a lot in the last 10 years. And so to have this project sitting on the shelf for 10 years and then dust it off and say, oh, let's complete a real estate transaction now that we started analysis on 10 years ago and not really have any significant updates to the transaction.
And just resume it to where it was. Yeah, because real estate's not the same as it was 10 years ago anywhere. I mean, that's just common knowledge. And so they're not like redoing anything. They're just saying, we started this 10 years ago. Let's pick up where we left off and try to get this land exchange to happen. We're seeing a lot of proposals with the BLM right now. They're trying to, sign projects. So I think this is one of them that they're just saying, oh, this was halted for one reason or another. We don't know why it didn't continue on. And so they're just starting where they left off. They're not redoing anything. They're not reevaluating anything. It's all the same information from 2015.
Is it common for like a 10-year, for these land exchanges to be like a 10-year window?
I mean, it's common for the process to take 10 years or even longer. We see that with land exchanges pretty frequently.
But usually they're still moving through the process, through the duration of the 10 years.
There's been things happening throughout it. This one's been interesting because it was like 2015, we got the BLM seeking public comment, and then there's been nothing until this year. So 10 years later. So it's not like there's been stuff happening. It's just been slow. Nothing has happened for a decade. And then boom.
At least
we don't have any idea why.
Yeah, I mean, at least that's what's observable in the public record. Who knows if there's been things happening behind the scenes. But the information is that the BLM gave us about all of those mechanics is pretty sparse. So they did do a full environmental analysis on this, but there's still it is a little odd to just leave something on the shelf for 10 years, no movement at all, and then pick it back up. And so with that all said, I mean, at Blue Ribbon Coalition, our attitude, Simone, I mean, you comment on a lot of land exchanges. My guess is it's all over the board of whether we support them or oppose them. Every single one of them, you really have to look at on their merits.
They're all so different. I mean, yeah. They really are.
And with this one, I started looking at it because we're kind of in this powder keg of a public discussion right now about whether it's ever reasonable or worth looking into for land that's currently public land owned by the federal government to transfer ownership to anybody else. We had these sell-off amendments that were in the budget bill, but we know there's various proposals like that all the time, and I think the public just doesn't know that this is a pretty common feature of the public land system. You had Secretary Zinke introduced the Keep Public Lands in Public Hands Act, which, like any act of Congress, sounds really great on the surface. Like the title is what everyone agrees with, but then you read the act, and he has 12 exceptions to when it actually is okay to trade out or sell off or do whatever with public land to where they're no longer now public lands. And land exchanges are one of those exceptions. There's various legal provisions to allow for land exchanges. And so we started looking into this one. I started looking at the maps just to kind of see, like, the public is fired up about these. We don't always do action alerts for these because they're usually very isolated to some very specific parcels of land. We have to find that there's a pretty interesting nexus with outdoor recreation for us to really mobilize the community around these. But I went and looked at this one, and it was clear looking at the map that this parcel of BLM land that they're giving away is unique. It's not the kind of land that's usually owned by the BLM. It's usually the kind of land that's owned by the Forest Service. And I could tell looking at the map that it was in a pretty high value alpine ecosystem. As I got looking at it really closely, realized there's a pretty significant river running through the property. And the more I looked at it, the more I kind of came to the conclusion that this piece of land we're giving away, just looking at Google Earth, is a spectacular piece of land. I'm just surprised that that's the position we're in. And then we started looking at the parcels we're getting, and it just didn't seem to add up. So Nick, you and I spent the weekend in Wyoming. We went out there to look at these just because I do believe you have to go get as much on the ground knowledge as you possibly can if you're going to weigh in heavily on a topic. And it's not always possible, and it doesn't mean we're not. There will be someone out there who sometime will comment on something like, oh, you didn't get on the ground. Why are you even weighing in on this? Like, we know what our interests are. We can tell from reading documents and maps whether our interests are being served on a pretty broad level. But to really be informed, if you haven't gone on the ground, there's definitely going to be an element of information you're missing with these things. So we went on the ground, Nick, and as someone who's kind of new to this space, why don't you tell us what you thought of your general impressions of these parcels we went and looked at?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started with the Big Sandy, the parcel that is currently in private hands that we'll be getting in this trade. And I mean, at first, just starting with that parcel, it was interesting. The Big Sandy River, it's a nice river. It is a little more sort of desolate and desert. Nonetheless, it's a river, which is nice, and it's got fishing in there. So when we first got there, I thought, oh, well, maybe this is a decent land swap, especially if we're getting a lot more acreage with it. So it's definitely interesting. I thought it was promising. I know you had sort of a suspicion that the deal might not be great. I was going into it, sort of open-minded and seeing what we were getting. So Big Sandy it was cool. It was nice. But then as soon as we started driving up towards the Piney Creek area, you could almost tell right away that it was going to be way nicer. I mean, just as a, off-roader recreation, I enjoy camping, fishing. You could tell right away that this land was definitely way different. It was an alpine forest. It's mountains. It's rugged. The creek it had waterfalls. It was rushing way faster, just so much more interesting. It was a place that you would just absolutely love to take your family or friends and spend a week in there, whether it's just camping or fishing. Whereas the other spot, at first I thought it was nice, but in comparison to, what's up in the Piney Creek area, it's completely different, night and day. It's the kind of stuff you see on like National Geographic or in documentaries. That's literally what it was like. And it was just absolutely beautiful.
Or like the TV show Yellowstone that they're all fighting over. I mean, it is really that kind of land. It's like Wyoming mountains with a spectacular river running through it that has definitely abundant fish living in it. But Nick, I mean, we didn't actually get to go and actually see any of the parcels themselves. Because why?
Because it is landlocked by private land right now. So the only ways into it is through private roads, which are all gated off. What we were able to do is we were able to fly our drone up there and take a look at it. And I mean, you'll see in the videos that we recorded, it's really spectacular. But yeah, it's hard to get to right now, but there could be a way for sure.
Yeah. And that is why the BLM has put this parcel on its list of parcels that are eligible for disposal. And that happened back with the
2008 Resource Management Plan.
And then we had the Rock Springs Resource Management Plan just get completed. But that one's being proposed to be rescinded in the budget reconciliation bill. And so you kind of have a very quicksand-like regulatory foundation underneath all of this, which could explain why they're rushing this through all of a sudden out of nowhere, is they finally got the resource management plans done. This was a project that had been sitting on the shelf while they were waiting for this, because the Big Sandy portion would have needed a resource management plan underwriting it, or it would have been illegal for them to transfer it without authorization within the plan. And so I think that could be why this one got resurrected. I don't know, because the agency didn't really give us any background on that. So in addition to the river we went to in the desert, the river we went to in the mountains, there's a handful of scattered parcels that also are down kind of in between Kemmerer and Labarge to the west. Up in the mountains more, not quite up into the alpine forested part of the mountains that we were in, but still high country. We didn't have time to go look at those because it was a lot of scattered parcels that would have taken us a whole separate day of just going into that area to review all those. We didn't have time.
Yeah, these are all orphaned parcels. And
yeah,
so
little ones, not even like they aren't even like the size of a whole 640 acre section. They're just like one of, what do they call that, Simone? Like a parcel within a section. I mean, it's like they're probably the 40 acre sections within the section, like subsections. And so it was a handful of these little 40 acre pieces that were scattered. And some of these 40 acre pieces did have roads going through them that would make it. And so let's go through kind of the rationale for each parcel, because each one has trade-offs and benefits. I mean, as I went into this, I'm like, I could really come out either way on this issue when we started. And Nick will tell you that. I mean, we even made some videos where I kind of was like, oh, we should see what this is all about. But by the end, I mean, we ended up saying, this isn't something we should support. There are problems with this. There are things that need to be resolved. But our position evolved through the day as we went and looked at these parcels. We didn't know what our position was going to be when we went out there. And so let's start with the parcel we're losing. I think you have to start there. So the 1,802 acres. This is, as we said, 1,802 acres. At least 267 of them are designated like riparian area, which is like the river down along the bottom. That's what I believe the documentation says, because they said we're losing 267 riparian areas and gaining 270. So riparian means riverfront, watershed, wetland. I mean, and up in the mountains, Nick, when we were driving in, we were passing beaver ponds. And I mean, this was like very much a pristine, intact, natural
very
ecosystem.
Scenic, I can imagine.
Yeah. But then you also have this very steep ridge line or mountain kind of ridge that goes up to the south of this river banks. I mean, that's what the river's cutting out at this mountain. And that's like a steep forested incline that then just has this flat ridge line that you see. And so the land itself is amazing. It's going to have tons of great wildlife on it. If you could get in there easily, it would be a prime destination to go in there and go camping, to go fishing, to just go spend time in beautiful scenery in the outdoors, just to go drive. I mean, the drive was enjoyable. You know, if you just want to go on a scenic drive, it was hard to get to. I don't think you're ever going to see the masses flood into this area because it's up kind of to the west of Big Piney in Wyoming. There's not a lot out there. If you don't live in that area, I doubt you get a whole lot of outsiders and tourist traffic coming through this area. You kind of have to put this on your map as a destination you want to go to. But at this point, you can't even get to it. And some of the lands before you got there were still good, and they were open and they were public lands, and there is still some land like this that you can experience there. But so the benefit of this public land, it is highly valuable, right? This is, if we're there, I'll talk about the valuations in a minute. We'll go through the valuations one by one in a separate part of the episode. And so those are the benefits, is this is just spectacular, grade A, some of the most pristine and awesome public lands you could go and visit and recreate on.
Yeah, I will say, I was looking at the Wyoming state government site. They do say that river is one of the premier fishing rivers in the state.
When we have other confirmation of that too. So we'll talk about that in a minute. The drawbacks
So
are,
if you want to go fishing in Wyoming, this is like the place to go.
It'd be a good place to go. I mean, I think Wyoming has a lot of good fishing, but this will definitely be on the list. And if you want to go, I mean, we didn't pass a single person on this road all day, and it was a beautiful time to be up there. All the wildflowers were out. Everything was bright green, new. It was a beautiful time to be in this part of Wyoming. And we were the only ones there. And so it's remote, it's secluded. It is not easy to get to. Even if there was a full public right-of-way to the parcel, which there currently is not. The BLM is not lying when they say it is currently landlocked. You really can't drive accessibly to it in any way, shape, or form.
And so that's why the BLM will say that they're wanting to trade this out.
That is why they're saying that. They can't get in it to manage it. The public can't get in there to enjoy it. And all of that is, up to this point, true. However, since 2015, actually just as recently as March of this year, 2025, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals has kind of released a pretty significant ruling about the issue of corner crossing, where if you have two parcels of public land where the corners meet, it is lawful for the public to travel from one point of that corner to the other. And the lawsuit was really looking at foot traffic, not vehicular traffic. But they did say that the private landowners can't exclude people from doing that activity called corner crossing, where you go from one public land parcel to the other over the corner of the property. How that could be navigated on a bigger scale or for some sort of perfected public access to this parcel would have to be analyzed. But there is a piece of state of Wyoming trust land that does corner up to this BLM land. And so it is not impossible, especially with new legal precedents, to access this land in ways that it probably would have seemed impossible 10 years ago. And so that's why that is the big drawback to this one. It is the justification for selling it, but without exploring that. And that's what the NEPA process is for, is to identify various alternatives of what are other ways we could approach this problem. We have this problem of this parcel that is landlocked. We have somebody requesting that it be transferred. Is there any other way we could approach this problem through a management solution? They have not analyzed that, and we think they should. They should have to analyze if they can create public access, and if they can't, then maybe still the exchange is the way to go. But if
nothing else, yeah, they need to at least look at that and see, is this truly an option? I mean, when they are making these alternatives, they're supposed to study a range of alternatives. And we don't have that with this.
In this one, they just gave us two. One of them was that we don't do anything, which means this will be continued to be managed without any public access, or that we do this swap as we have designed it. And so that is the reality on the ground with parcel one. If you are someone who loves our public lands and you were to see this parcel, it would break your heart to give this one up, to say, wait, there's really no way I can get into this. And the answer to that is that's a definite maybe. And honestly, on foot, you could. If you wanted to get as close as you could and then walk on foot across this state of Wyoming parcel and then corner cross in the legal way that is now allowed according to this 10th Circuit of Appeals thing, you could get into there on foot right now. It's not impossible. It's just very, very difficult. And so that is parcel number one. So parcel, what they call area number two, is the area that's south of there to the west of Labarge, where you have all these scattered little 40-acre parcels. And we didn't get a chance to go look at these on the ground, but the BLM doesn't like having islands of private property within its holdings, because then you have private property owners who can fence people out. They can block roads.
Yeah, it makes it hard to manage.
It just makes it hard for them to manage. As the government, they want to just own big parcels. I'm actually a private property guy. You know, I think if the private property is there, it creates tax base for the counties. I believe we should have public access easements. When you're a private property surrounded by public land, you should have to be a little deferential to that reality, and counties and the public and everybody need to be a little more cooperative in having public access when they're, because it is terrible to have public land get landlocked out because of behavior of private property owners. We run into this problem all the time with Blue Ribbon Coalition. And so generally you have to have really functional public access and easement laws in place and right-of-ways to where public access can be protected when it's been historically used across private lands. But the BLM's saying that there are problems of access in this area and that acquiring these isolated parcels will improve their ability to manage these areas. It does look as if some of these parcels do have springs on them and some riparian streams. I don't know that any of them would qualify to be like rivers, like what was flowing through this parcel we're giving away. But they're probably
I think they're still considered some wetlands, though, just because of the water that.
And the resource management plan does say that if you're going to do a land exchange and it has riparian area, you have to get riparian area back. So I think that's why they're kind of including some of these parcels. The quality is lower, just as lower. Like to have this free flowing wild river compared to a creek or a spring or something. Those aren't comparable riparian resources, but this exchange is treating them as such. And I would like to see the access perfected. But honestly, Nick, if we were in a capable four-wheel drive vehicle, was there very much terrain that we couldn't go blaze a new trail on this land? Or if we had a bulldozer? I mean, all this land was like pretty forgiving. If you needed to go to create a new trail, if you needed to create
easily
a bypass trail around some private property on this BLM land, in this area too, with the Explore Act, which does require the BLM to analyze creating new outdoor recreation experiences for motorized recreation, they have a green light to go build new roads. And one of the first areas they should focus on is building bypass routes where private property owners have locked the public out of their public lands. Almost every parcel I looked at down in that area too on a map, on a topographical map, you could build a bypass road around that property. These aren't big properties. They're only 40 acres max. Like you can get diversion routes around them, and the BLM just hasn't even tried.
Yeah.
Because if they try to build new roads, they get sued by environmental groups.
But now the law is on their side with the Explore Act.
Yeah, and the Trump administration has made it really easy to analyze the construction of new roads and resources. And so it's like, we should at least analyze that. I don't think that the landlocked private parcels down there are quite the burden that they're making them out to be. But there's benefit there if we got them. I mean, there's hunting there, there's fishing, it's all beautiful mountainous land. I don't think any of it's quite to the level of what we're giving up.
I mean, I think it's important to keep in context that in that area that we're talking about, there's still a lot of public land there that we can access right now. So it's
mostly public land. For every acre of private, there's 100 acres of public. And so
exactly. So you have access to that type of terrain, and there's a lot of trails in there that we can access. I get why BLM wants to consolidate it. But yeah, I mean, compared to what you're giving up to something that you basically kind of already have, and it's just going to be more convenient for the BLM, for me, that trade-off just is not worth it.
So tell everybody, I mean, because you guys were actually there, on this river that the BLM currently has, if they were to trade out, if they were to move forward with this proposal, is there anywhere else that the public could go and access this river in the first parcel that we talked about it?
I mean, where I made a video that's on TikTok and Instagram right now, and I'm standing right next to it. That was on BLM land. And the river also flows through some Forest Service land. So there is some river access. But having this land still gives you probably 5 more miles of river access because it's very windy. And
I will
probably
say
not 5, probably more like 3, but yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, where the BLM land is currently, it's flatter around the river. It's kind of like more like a marshy. So it's just where we were, it's almost like kind of a cliff. Like you have to walk down into the river.
So it could be even better access. I mean, if we could actually access that parcel, then it's way better than where the BLM or the Forest Service would give you access to. So, I mean, it's not like the BLM can come and say, well, you have access. There's other places that you can go to have the same experience. Like, it sounds like that's just not the case. You cannot have the same experience anywhere else.
Yeah, it is a unique experience. And my guess is...
And in Area 2, you could have the same experience somewhere else.
Area 2, you could have that same experience all throughout Area 2 because, again, 99% of Area 2 is public land. This area, like we said, this area where parcel Area 1 is, the parcel we're giving away, all the good stuff is private because it all got homesteaded because people wanted to own this.
I get why it was homesteaded.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like if you were needing to live back in the day of the homesteading, you'd want to be by a source of river that had abundant fish in it. Like this is the flat land where you're talking. I mean, that's going to be where the wildlife does congregate. And so for hunting and all of those other reasons, it's going to be more valuable. So if you hunt or fish you really want this BLM land to stay public. You really do. And so that's area 1 and 2. So if we go to area 3, this is that portion on the Big Sandy River, which is really like night and day as far as what the terrain is. And I actually really love desert rivers. I mean, this reminded me a lot of in Utah, I've spent a lot of time like the San Rafael River as it flows through the San Rafael Desert, or the Green River as it comes out of the Book Cliffs. And you get these awesome big desert rivers that are like this oasis of cottonwood trees and grass and in an otherwise relatively barren, like sagebrush plain. And so the Big Sandy River does have its own unique charm, right? I looked at the ranches for sale around there and I'm like, I'd own that ranch. I'd live on the Big Sandy River if I had to. You've got this beautiful view of the Wind River Mountains way off in the distance. And it had its own unique charm. And it was but I kind of am open-minded. I like all the public lands I go visit. It just is not comparable in any way, shape, or form to the high alpine ecosystem that this other one is in. It's different. I mean, there's still going to be a lot of ecological value. You're going to get a lot of additional, I guarantee the Big Sandy River gets a lot of wildlife, has plenty of fish in it too. I mean, there's a lot of those things are comparable, but just the overall setting and the terrain it's not an apples to apples trade. We're definitely getting something less valuable with the portion of the desert river that we're getting.
And to Simone's point, you have similar access to that river in other places.
Yes, it's relatively limited, but because again, that river also got homesteaded out because that's where you would want to live if you were living in this part of Wyoming. Everywhere else is pretty inhospitable. And so that's sort of the benefit and the trade-offs there. It's still like a decent piece of land, and if we were just trading desert river for desert river, this would be like the kind of exchange to be like, okay, whatever. I mean, if we were trading some alpine river for like a consolidated piece of other alpine river, okay, that makes sense. But these aren't apples to apples exchanges. And so to confirm this, I mean, we know that they started the analysis on this in 2015. I went on to Zillow to see, are there any parcels out here for sale in any of these areas? And surprisingly, there were actually 3. There was a parcel near each one of these areas where we're giving up BLM land to give us kind of a general sense of what the comparative real estate values are in those areas, because the BLM is required to look at these. And this is something we care about because Simone and I mean, back in the day, we opposed the Bears Ears land exchange for the state parcels out of Bears Ears. And it's because they were giving away 116,000 acres of state land within Bears Ears to get BLM land elsewhere. And the people orchestrating this trade was like, this is going to be great. We're going to get hundreds of millions of dollars out of this. And I'm like, there's no way the Bears Ears parcels are only worth hundreds of millions of dollars. They're
in the middle of a pristine national monument.
These are like national park level lands at this point. They should be worth billions of dollars, because we know in Wyoming, we had a landlocked piece of land in the middle of the Grand Tetons National Park, and that sold for $100 million, 640 acres. So we're looking at, like, I think I did the math, and it's like $150,000 an acre for national park level pristine lands. And so if Sitla in Utah was fighting to get that level of value out of its lands, that Sitla trade should have been tens of billions of dollars to the state of Utah in order to acquire those parcels. And they were happy with a couple $100 million. And so but then what they would say is, well, our Sitla parcels aren't worth that. They're worthless. And I'm like, how could they possibly be worthless? We've been told for 10 years now how precious and pristine and important the Bears Ears lands are. And you're telling us they're worthless? They're like, well, there aren't direct comparable real estate comps where we can compare them to. So all we have to go off of is other rural vacant land. And because we can't manage it, because we can't access it, because we can't develop our resources, because we're in the middle of this protected now national monument, it's worthless. And I'm like, well, hold on. So you're telling the national monument designation impaired the value of your asset. And now the federal government, who's the one who impaired the value of your asset, is coming to you and saying, well, I'll give you pennies on the dollar now for that impaired asset. That's unfortunate that somebody came and impaired the value of your land.
I mean, It's like your analogy, Ben, that somebody comes and takes a bat to your car, trashes your car, and then forces you and says, well, okay, I'll give you $100 for it, and forces you to sell
I'll buy the parts from you.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we're dealing with in Wyoming is we care that these lands are adequately valued. And we don't know what the valuations are that they use to value these, but based on what I found on Zillow in 10 minutes of research, there is a parcel that's a little over 500 acres for sale on the upper Big Piney River, the river up there. And they're selling that for, I think, $5.5 million. And so it's, when you do the math on that, that's $11,000 an acre. And again, that's downstream. That's not up in the upper alpine ecosystems where you're up in all the conifers and the pine trees and the forests. This is where you're still down in sort of more of the valley, where it's more of the cottonwoods and the sagebrush and stuff. And that still is going for $11,000 an acre. And they say in there that it is prime fishery habitat. And they have like this metric that it's like 50 to 299 pounds of fish per mile in that river. And that there is all this big game, and that you can, that property does come with water rights, and those have their own value. And this, I don't know that this exchange property is going to come with water rights. So I don't know that you'd be cultivating fields up there. But so there are some, like, it's always tricky to kind of do direct comparisons on rural real estate.
But I mean, it is safe to say that if you're using valuation of real estate from 10 years ago, it's going to be outdated. I mean, I don't know anywhere that the real estate is the same price today as it was 10 years ago. I mean, I'd love to see somewhere where that's the case.
Especially not in the West, and especially not after COVID. All these properties have a premium on them, and that's not being reflected in this trade. And I think this property up in the mountains has got to be somewhere between what that Yellowstone or what the Grand Teton inholding was, which was $100 million for 640 acres, and this adjacent property, which was, so it's somewhere between $150,000 an acre and $11,000 an acre. It's not less than $11,000 an acre, but that's the value of the property we're giving away. If it is $11,000 an acre, then that property, bare bones on its own, should be worth $20 million.
Instead, we're paying them.
Instead, we are paying the person.
So your tax dollars. We are
giving them tax dollars and paying them cash and giving them all the land to take this land out of public hands. And then they're going to give us this desert river access, and then these scattered little 40-acre parcels to the south. Crazy. And so I went and looked at a ranch on Big Piney River, one that has same river access. And its acreage, it had about 3,000 acres of deeded property. It's going for $8.5 million. I did the math on that one, and it came out to about $2,000 an acre. So we're really looking at and then the other area down to the south, I found another property, and that one came out to about $5,000 an acre. So the stuff we're getting is between $2,000 and $5,000 an acre. And so for this trade to be a fair deal for the public, we should be getting 5 acres for every acre we're giving up, and we're not getting that. Or they should be paying us cash plus land. We're not getting that. Like, this is just an unbalanced, poorly evaluated trade. And that's why there is this public comment process, is so that groups like ours can come and scrutinize this. And to my knowledge, I mean, no one's talked about this. We have all these groups that have been out there beating their chests about how they're going to fight to keep our public lands in public hands. Some of those have actually supported this. So Western Watersheds Project supports this, as it was drafted up in 2015. I don't know if they still support it now, but because Western Watersheds was an amicus curiae brief on the corner crossing case in defense of the corner crossers. And so the lawsuit they won changes the whole playing field of this trade. But they supported this. It'd be interesting to see if their position's still the same, you know? And so that's kind of the math on this one. This is BLM math, and I think it's way off. I think the public's getting ripped off. And so I didn't come into this thinking I'm going to absolutely oppose this. What Nick will tell you, I went into this thinking there's a possibility this would be a kind of trade we support, because if there are these areas, we were standing right by a no trespassing gate. We couldn't get in any further. And we're like, I would love to go past this gate. I want to go down to that river. I don't want to stop here. But it just full transparency and just trying to be honest brokers of information of what we saw on the ground. We're not getting a good trade with this.
Yeah, I agree. I'm curious, does BLM have to show you technically their actual math on how they valued these lands?
Yeah, that's all part of the public record. It's a little surprising it wasn't included in any of the documentation. We'd have to go double check. Maybe it's buried in an appendix somewhere, but I definitely didn't see it featured prominently in the analysis. And so my concern is that we might not be able to get that unless we go into some sort of legal action on this and have to get it through discovery of the administrative record. But it's not that that isn't disclosed. It's just they certainly didn't make it very readily available.
Got it. Interesting.
But all of this has to be part of a public record. It can't really all happen behind closed doors. So we have 2 days. I mean, we're recording this on June 9th, and this is due on June 11th. And we kind of caught wind of it a little over a week ago, and we had to make adjustments in schedules to get up to Wyoming to go look at this. So we wish we would have had more time, but they're wanting to get this one out. So Simone, I mean, we've prepared an action alert. It's on our website. You can
submit a comment to the BLM. We have questions, as we've highlighted on this. We want the valuations to be public. If they're going to do a trade, it's not that we're always pro these exchanges or always anti these exchanges. We look at it on a case-by-case basis. But if they're going to do it, it at least needs to be honest and fair to the American people. And there needs to be built-in protections for recreation and public access.
Which that's another important point, is that currently there is not. They're saying that
if it goes through,
like when you do NEPA, you have to say what your purpose and need is for the project. And they say that the purpose of this exchange is to improve public recreation access. And so we first started reading this. That's why we looked at this when we were like, oh, this could be good for recreation. And then we go look what that improving recreation access looks like. And all they're saying is, down the road, when we do a travel management plan for this area, we will look at making sure that there's routes that these routes will be open to the public, or that there will be public access. And so they're not even analyzing. I mean, in my mind, that's kind of a NEPA violation to say we're doing this to increase public access, but then nothing
and then
in
it's not in the EA
analyzes how they're going to do that. So they should be like including the proposed right of ways. What are the guarantees in writing and like the legally protectable guarantees that we're getting that we're going to get public access to all these new parcels? Because I'm not sure that we will. They said it will happen through travel planning. We know that the resource management plan in Rock Springs is probably going out the door in a couple of weeks. They're going to have to go back to square one and do that plan again. And they won't do travel planning until that's done. And so it could be another 10 years before we get any clarity or guarantee that we will have any public access to these parcels.
And even then, they could do travel management planning in 10 years from now and decide, oh, this shouldn't have a road. Yeah.
And the reason we're worried about that, and this is not an idle fear, is that the Western Watersheds Project supports this. They're an anti-access group. They will say, and Simone, the Big Sandy River parcel we're talking about, was in one of the ACECs that was designated in the resource management plan. So they'd say, oh, well, that's in an ACEC. We can't have motorized recreation access into that. And if they have a friendly administration in office, when that all comes through, they could end up not keeping the public access open that was promised in this exchange. And so because it's not actually included in writing in the deal as part of this exchange, we have no guarantee of it, just a lot of feel-good words that this is what they intend to do down the road. And that's why they're doing it now. And so we have pretty legitimate concerns about that. And so we need to see an alternative where if they do go through with the trade, that they show us how those are potentially going to get addressed immediately, because it's within the scope of what they're proposing to do. And so to leave that out is negligent and arguably a violation of NEPA.
And this is all in the action alert, so we make it easy for you to send a comment to the BLM that highlights all of these concerns. You can include your own personal message as well, and we encourage people to do so. Personalize it, especially if you have on-the-ground knowledge of this area, if you've got a vested interest in this. Include that. You have until June 11th to submit your comment, June 11th at midnight. So get your comments in if you care about this.
Yeah, which means by the time you're hearing this, because it'll take us at least a couple hours to get it posted on June 10th, you have a day. So go do it. Click the link down in the show notes. The description will be, there's already a lot of videos out about this. There will be
share it on social media.
Share it with your groups.
Spread it far and wide.
The public's really fired up about this issue of like how public land ownership should and shouldn't work. And so go have a good discussion about this one. This one's very eye-opening as to how the process works. And I think the way we handled it is a good benchmark as to how other groups should do this. Like, we want people to see us as, we are going to go look at, we have our bias. We want recreation access, so we wear that on our sleeve. We're not hiding anything. That's what we want here. But we did our homework on this one. We really went out and looked at it, and We can't do that on everything, but as issues like this come up, we'll try to do more of these. The public's getting very animated about this. So we will be, I expect there will be more of these coming down the pike, even though Simone, I mean, you probably have commented on 10 or more land exchanges in the last 2 or 3 years.
Maybe about a dozen in the last 4 years.
And so it's not that these don't ever happen, but we just want to have a good, honest, open public debate about it. And so hopefully this is helpful information for folks. Anything else you want to add, Nick?
This was super eye-opening to actually go up there, like you said, actually be on the ground and see what's going on and do our due diligence. And yeah, I mean, I'm definitely comfortable in our position that we don't think this is, a great deal for the public, especially without those assurances that even if we get that to that other river, that we're going to have access to it. So I definitely think everybody needs to go out there and at least pause this transfer until we get more information and more assurances.
Yeah, I mean, they really should have started it over again.
It's been a decade. Yeah.
Like a decade ago. I mean, it wouldn't. This administration is accelerating the NEPA analysis, so it would have. I mean, I think they need to take another 30 days, review the public comments. We'd be glad to go meet with anybody that's trying to make this happen. We don't want to just obstruct and block a project indefinitely, but it needs to be explained to me why this parcel that on paper looks like it's worth $20 million isn't getting $20 million worth of value back. And their realty specialists maybe can explain that better to us. I don't see it. I mean, you'll see on our social posts, we have the pictures of we're giving up this for this. The picture says that all the thousands of words you need it to say to be like, this isn't a fair trade. If we're like, it should be a 5-to-1 trade that we're getting 5 acres of private for every public we're getting. And I don't like that idea. I don't like bringing that much. I think the federal government has a hard time managing the land it has. And so to bring a whole bunch of private land into the federal estate isn't the solution to the problem. The solution to the problem is we need to build more roads into the parcels that it can't manage and that are landlocked. Sometimes that doesn't make sense, but this time I think it could if they would just look at it. So anyway, so you guys have a day. The clock is ticking. Go get your comments in, and there's a lot of other things cooking. So we'll be back soon with another episode of the Defend Your Ground podcast. So subscribe to us and keep following, and we'll keep giving you good information.